Welcome to the Calgary Environmental Roundtable Municipal Election Campaign, led by the Gravity Well podcast with me, Jenny Yeremy. The Calgary Environmental Roundtable, or CERT for short, is a nonpartisan coalition of environmental and climate organizations working together to ensure that water, nature, and climate are front of mind and that our members have an ongoing opportunity to shape the future of our city. Through our candidate questionnaire, mayoral and ward podcast panels, and voter engagement tool, CERT is connecting residents with candidates, elevating environmental priorities, and empowering Calgarians to make informed choices at the ballot box. Municipal decisions directly affect the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the communities we live in. As Calgary continues to grow, we must prioritize clean water, biodiversity, and bold climate action to ensure a safe and thriving city for generations to come. Our list of supporters is growing. Reach out to add your organization. Send your candidates and network the CERT questionnaire. Encourage their participation and ongoing relationship building with their representatives. Remember to follow, like, subscribe, and share the Gravity Well podcast. Together we can build a resilient, healthy, and sustainable city for all Calgarians.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the final episode of the Calgary Environmental Roundtable, Building a Greener Future for Calgary Municipal Election Campaign. It's been a privilege to meet so many candidates. Today, I'm really looking forward to speaking with one of your Ward 13 candidates, Elliot Weinstein. So yes, you heard that right. If you are tuning in for Ward 14, forgive me, but that we weren't able to get participation for your ward. However, if you check out the Gravity Well website under the CERT campaign, you will see a couple answers from a couple of your candidates there. So I want to say thank you too. And the list is fairly substantial. So thank you to everyone. Jeremy Farkas for mayor, Ali Unwala for Ward 1, Jennifer Wyness and Trevor Kavanaugh for Ward 2, Andrew Yule and Jasprina Jahal for Ward 3, DJ Kelly for Ward 4, David Barrett, Anthony Askew, and Mike Atkinson for Ward 7, Miguel Cortines for Ward 8, Harrison Clark, Marina Ortman, Shirley Perengao Doe for Ward 9, Alex Williams and Courtney Penner for Ward 11, and Sarah Ferguson for Ward 12 for your participation. You can check out their conversations, like I said, on my website. Also on YouTube, I have a dedicated playlist to this podcast mini-series. And also, thank you to the co-hosts I had. Solar Alberta participated in a couple of ways. Preet helped me open this with Bob Hawksworth, who was a former councillor for the City of Calgary for 23 years. Check that conversation out. And Heather McKenzie and I had a conversation about some misinformation around solar and clean energy in the province. Have a listen to that. And if you still want to hear from your mayoral candidates, please let them know that there are a few. I'm still looking to hear from Mayor Gondak, Sonia Sharp, and Jeff Davidson. If you're interested in seeing their responses, please poke them. Use the QR code in the top right corner of the screen. This campaign is most successful because of you and your support. We had responses from 34 candidates across the city. So that's just over 50%. 10 out of 4 wards participated. That's over 70% of the wards who participated in this. And 18 candidates were a part of those conversations. And I'm including Elliot in that, which I'll get to right away. So before we begin, please note that the candidates hold a range of environmental positions, priorities, and objectives. Positions taken by participants, either individually or collectively, do not necessarily represent those of the Calgary Environmental Roundtable as a whole. Again, CERT and this campaign do not endorse or recommend any candidates or political parties. I will do my best, however, to offer some personal endorsements after we are done, which is after today. Lastly, remember to follow, like, subscribe, and share the Gravity Well podcast. With that, you will help get this work boosted and help the candidates get more reach. So together we can build a resilient and healthy, sustainable city for all Calgarians. And with that, I will finally welcome you to the stage, Elliot. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Jenny. Thank you very much for having me. Sorry, I'm just liking and subscribing. There we go. Perfect. Thank you for that reminder. Here we go.
So much appreciated. Really, really great. So Elliot Weinstein is a husband, father, and a small business owner. His focus has always been on creating vibrant community through volunteering, through his business, and now through public service. Elliot completed his undergrad and MBA at the U of C with an MBA focused on energy and sustainability. I forgot I read that before we joined. I'm so excited to chat with you about some of these things.
Absolutely.
After spending 5 years working as a project manager, he has changed careers and moved into sports and recreation, where he opened his first business in 2018, the Beach YYC, which I was noting before we started that I've been there. My son's hockey team was there for a wrap-up party. So great
Wonderful.
space. Highly recommend. In fact, I'm going to, now that I think about it, try to book a night with some friends. We need to do something like that.
Please do.
Yeah. So Elliot's volunteered with the Canadian Association of Disabled Skiers and Snowboarders, connected environmental professionals, and leading Change Canada. He lives with his wife, their 2 kids, and their dog, Frida. Thank you so much for running, Elliot, and for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, a pleasure.
Excellent. Yeah. So what made you decide to run as a candidate this election?
Well, I mean, I've always been interested in public service and community service. Of course, as you noted, I spent a number of years on a couple of boards, a local and a national board. And then as this election was kind of gearing up, and I was looking at who kind of was representing the city and the ward. And I thought it was time for some change in Ward 13. And I kind of looked around and poked a few people. And it just, it turned out, well, it's up to me. So I had to put my hand up and jump forward and, make an effort to kind of make some change here in Ward 13.
Yeah, thank you for that. I greatly appreciate you giving some options in your riding. I was interested to notice that your riding only has 2 candidates. It's pretty,
Right.
Yeah. So head-to-head race. Good luck.
Yeah, it's 50-50 for sure. And I mean, I've kind of felt it's been 50-50 from the get-go, to be honest. And really, it's going to come down to turnout. So who we can get to turn out in support of myself will really be who gets elected. So if you're in Ward 13 and you're listening to this podcast, please turn out.
Yeah, this is, I just want to highlight, because you're bringing it up and it's important. There has been a lack of engagement in this municipal election. So, the intent is to make sure that, if you are watching this, share this with your network, make sure that people are engaged with this election, make sure that they know that they have some candidates that are stepping up to the plate in a big way and need their support. So thank you. With that, let's get going on these questions. I'm excited to learn a little bit potentially from you, Elliot, with your background. So much appreciated. Okay. So Calgary's climate strategy outlines 5-year goals to reduce energy poverty, utility costs, create climate economy jobs, improve public health, and build more equitable, climate resilient communities. If elected, how will you achieve these outcomes for Calgarians?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there to unpack, kind of, and I think really the way we do it is to ensure that these issues are kind of front and center in whatever we're doing as council and as community residents in Calgary and Ward 13, of course. So making sure that we're including how we're going to address these in every kind of conversation that comes up, every issue that we're trying to address, be it housing or transit or safety, needs to kind of be reflected in how these 5 priorities are coming up. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, sorry, I'm just looking over at the questions over here on my other screen. I think as far as like energy poverty and utility costs, let's say, I think one of the ways to really address that is how we build our housing and our built environment, how we address transit and transportation issues, because those are all going to kind of work together, and how we address both of those things really very much. And if we can work on improving transit, and we can work on improving how we are building houses and where we're adding houses and population, that's how you kind of can address some of those issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I loved how you talked about making it front and center in all the discussions you have. That's how you handle the big things, is making sure that they are accounted for. So thank you for acknowledging that. And yeah, housing and transit have been the two main things that have come up in this conversation around that, how we can move everybody into this climate strategy in
Right.
a holistic way. So yeah, thank you for bringing both of those up, and how they go hand in hand and they help each other, and then they end up benefiting all of us.
Yeah. And I mean, really, especially as we talk about, the southern portion of Ward 13 in some of these newer areas as they're just getting built, and transit's so important to the entire city, of course. But as our new areas get built up and developed, they also need transit, and they also need ways to get around, and making sure that as communities are growing, that we have other means to get around our communities and around our city, including transit, including multi-use pathways, and even including smaller unique businesses in these communities that we can just go grab some milk or eggs or some of the basics. Because if you drive around some of these areas right now, those smaller businesses and corner stores aren't there yet, and so it just means that without transit, without pathways, without stores, they're driving everywhere, even if it's just to grab a snack or grab something for their kids or their family. And so we really need to address it as communities are growing and make sure it's working together.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, it's so true. This, I remember being out in this area when it was being developed and having access to so many things. And yeah, it's never been very logical in this way when it's really thought about first and foremost and prioritized. That's where it will really drive change in the city. So much appreciated. Okay, so how will you ensure, next question is around community development and redevelopment, protecting our watersheds. So how will you ensure new community development and redevelopment will protect our watersheds, rivers and creek valleys, wetlands, and the wildlife and urban biodiversity depend on these ecosystems?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as these new developments are being built and new areas are being built up, it's obviously important that we make sure from the get-go that it's either part of a bylaw or part of the actual development as the developers are building it. But I also think, I think it's important to recognize that the communities that are moving there because a lot of times, certainly it's because they love that aspect of being on the edge of the city, being near nature, being near the river, deer walking through your yard, and just kind of having that environment and living in that environment that is so close to nature. So yes, certainly part of it is making sure that as a city, we're adding the necessary bylaws to say, like, these are what needs to be protected as you're building, but also recognizing that the communities want that too, and the people that are moving there want that. And so as opposed to just kind of being, it's city bylaw driven, and then developers and people are like, the city's adding so many rules, blah, blah, blah. But this is also something that the communities want and the people want, and recognizing that it comes from both sides, that these are, important for city, for biodiversity, and ensuring that we have, we're protecting, it's not just protecting our environment and protecting our animals, but it's also protecting from, things like floods. Obviously, we've seen, if we're not taking these actions to actually mitigate from, climate change and other effects, then we're just kind of adding costs to our communities and to the people that live there later on. So, there's really important aspects from a few different ways, be it, you can make sure that it's properly bylaw and regulated, that the community actually wants it, and that there is that fiscal benefit as well, which doesn't necessarily show up on day one, but is certainly there in the long term.
Yeah, that's so great. I love there's been a few people that have mentioned bylaws, like just having this stuff codified is really critical to help move people along through this work. So thank you for acknowledging that. Understanding that people, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think that aspect is quite important, really, because certainly, as much as, we talk about community interest and flooding mitigation and other mitigations, if it's not codified in some sort of bylaw, then it won't, get realized.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it's so true. And, understanding that people want to be near nature, they want to see nature, we enjoy nature. So just realizing that goes hand in hand, and it's that long-term vision that helps us understand how these places can be, good. It's a win-win where you've got it's good for the city, it's good for the developers, and it's great for the community. This is what they want. Yeah.
And part of Ward 13, so Fish Creek Park comes through Ward 13.
Okay.
So it's an easy thing to just say, we have this other area that is protected, that is beautiful, that is nature. It's used by certainly wildlife. It's used by people for walks and runs and picnics. And so, we've obviously incorporated that into Ward 13 and into our city, and it's a very beautiful piece of our municipal infrastructure. And we can show that as a demonstration of how, look, this is how it can work in the South as well, near these new communities, but we do need to make sure that they are protected, so that it's protected for wildlife, for our built environment, and for people.
Yeah, and you're making me remember I've collaborated with Friends of Fish Creek a lot, the community organization. And one of the things that they've taught me is that only 1% of Fish Creek Park is native grass. So there's a long way to go there in terms of getting it back to that natural state, but it's so important that it's protected, and there is work being done to do that right now. So there you go. There's a group that you can think of when you're considering those spaces and incorporating their expertise. They're a tremendous organization. Okay, so next question is around dedicating budget dollars towards protecting Calgary's biodiversity and improving wildlife safety, including through measures such as enforcing bird-friendly building standards, retrofitting existing structures, and supporting safe wildlife corridors. So how will you commit those budget dollars? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we'll certainly commit budget dollars, I think, towards these issues. And again, I'm certainly running in Ward 13. There's, you have, like I said, Fish Creek, and then southern kind of more rural areas within the city. And so I think when I'm talking about these kinds of things, especially with people who live in Ward 13 and may not agree to necessarily, adding fiscal responsibility to the city about how are they going to afford this, all kinds of things. And I think the way I love to talk about it is that, yes, we're spending money from the city's perspective, but we're also, the reason is to save money in the long term. So there is like a real fiscal benefit to doing certain things like this. And, we talk about retrofitting buildings. The purpose certainly is to address emissions and the energy use of buildings, but on the backside, then the people who own those buildings don't have to spend as much money on their utility costs. So it's kind of like that flip side of, okay, we're requiring this fiscal output, but there's that fiscal benefit as well. So it's not just saying, we're doing this as a purely environmental thing, which obviously is kind of the leading reason, but there's fiscal benefits too. So I do think that would be incredibly important, and certainly would support that. Let's see, you mentioned, so wildlife safety in our urban environment. I was out walking in Fish Creek the other day, doing some door knocking, ran across a family of deer. And it was wonderful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see the natural environment kind of working with our own personal environment, and people really do love that. People love seeing deer in their backyard and beautiful birds kind of coming to build nests in their trees and things like that. So I don't think I think that's an easy one, and people do love seeing that, and it might, and it just adds to the vibrancy of our communities and our city. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just appreciating that, yes, these are dollars that, potentially are an investment, but that means in the long term, you're not committing those dollars all the time. Like, for example, we've been talking, or what's come up in this conversation with others is the boulevards and the grass that we mow, that's an annual expense versus this one-time seeding and potentially weeding at some point. as you move that back through to potentially some renaturalization areas, right?
Mhm.
Less pruning and things like that when you allow a forest rather than just a tree. All of these
Right.
great ways. And then what else I've learned from Kathleen Johnson, who's Calgary Urban Species Response Team, if I've said that all right, is that I didn't appreciate that window strikes for birds happen everywhere. I thought it was
Right.
concentrated in downtown, like she said a lot of people think, and it's not. It's like you said, it's literally, we all have to think about this. So even an education piece, which is so cheap, just to
Yeah.
help people understand how important it is to put, a sticker on your window and do those potential retrofits with bird friendly window panes would be a wonderful thing to get out there for people. Because like I said, I've learned a lot through these conversations, and that's one of them. So, Okay. So next question is around housing, rent, and transit.
Great.
So what steps will you take to ensure housing, rent, and transit in Calgary are affordable and accessible so that more Calgarians can access services with dignity and live and work in a healthy city?
So I mean, so housing and transit and rent and affordability obviously are a big topic with this election overall. And I think the way we kind of address it all is through an actual good forward-thinking housing policy for the city. Of course, if we want people to take transit, you need transit to be available where people live. And the other thing is, if more people are taking transit, it becomes safer, it becomes just overall better, and then we can kind of expand transit, and then it becomes safer again, and more people can use it. So it's really kind of like that upward cycle of, as more people use it, it's better and safer, and more people use it. And so it's really about kind of making sure that we prioritize, especially as our city's growing towards 2 million people here over the next 4 to 5 years. We prioritize building around transit corridors, transit-oriented development for larger buildings, but certainly even in our established neighborhoods, figuring out how we can protect communities and protect community vibrancy, but also we need to address some communities have been shrinking over the past 10 and 20 years. And so we need to figure out how people can live there again. And so figuring out those and coming up with actual solutions to our housing crisis will address, can address transit issues, housing issues, rental issues. And we just need, I think, a new face in Ward 13, certainly, to start to address some of those things. And on the flip side is, if we kind of go backwards to what we were doing in the past, which is basically like prioritizing growth through sprawl. The issue there, of course, is it's hard to build good transit in sprawl where there's fewer people living and it's just further away. And so if that's the only way we're growing our city with the next, with this council and beyond, it's hard to figure out how you can then improve transit and improve access and improve affordability if everything is just continuing to spread out into the edge of the city. But yeah, so it really is a forward-thinking housing plan, how we address growth, not just through sprawl, but kind of adding housing to areas that are already established along good transit lines, transit-oriented development. And that starts to kind of like work with everything else. And then, also it works well to talk about how we protect kind of more, watersheds and open areas on the edges of the city that we're building in now. That also works together, because then we don't have to build there as much if we can find other areas kind of in established neighborhoods for people to live in.
Wonderful stuff. It's like music to my ears, because I was part of a group called Calgarians for Sensible Growth that spoke all about this sprawl issue that has been rampant through several areas, and your area being one of them. Significant problems, and it's just exasperating this issue of lack of access to transport and lack of access to affordable and accessible housing, like in terms of those additional costs that you talk about that people don't see until they've locked themselves into this new location, and now they're stuck with, they don't know how to get around, and now they've got to need a car. da 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 da. It's all those things that are like that negative spiral. And so, like you were saying, if you focus on revitalizing those communities with spaces like, Beach YYC, we give people some options in some of those, areas of the city that are less utilized, getting people back excited about the communities that we do have and revitalizing them. I just love to hear that reinvestment in what we already have. Thank you so much. And just understanding, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I mean, I have heard from like a lot of people, a cross section of people with a lot of different values and issues from this election. I mean, one thing that people are really concerned about is their like community vibrancy, that the city's going to come in and build a fourplex in their cul-de-sac, and people are legitimately concerned about these kinds of things. And so, my response to that is always, well, we just need people who want to like talk about how we have real solutions moving forward, but we can protect community vibrancy, we can protect cul-de-sacs, we can protect the neighborhoods that people have bought into, because it is a real concern for a lot of people. But we can do it, and we can still address housing if we talk about how we do it, let's say along transit corridors again, because we do have to do a bit of a juggle with both about people's concerns in their communities and in their neighborhoods, but concerns for, if we go backwards in our policy ideas, we're just building sprawl. And then again, that, if that's how we prioritize growth, it doesn't work for anybody.
Right.
But, those concerns are valid, and I want to make sure we're addressing those.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your earlier comments around bringing community members along, like making sure that you have that understanding of what people want long term rather than just that short term solution. And that's where, if there isn't a proper engagement with those community members when a fourplex goes in, it's not going to work long term. And that's really what I think the city has faced. And also what came up, actually, I think it was Ward 7. We talked, maybe Ward 9, we talked about how a lot of the houses that have been quote unquote affordable are not accessible for people necessarily either. So making sure that those units are, in fact, that's another part of that balance, right? Is to make sure that those, yes, you might need a fourplex because who's going to buy them otherwise if they're these 4 massive places or 2 massive places that nobody can afford. So you're right. But again, this comes with those conversations ultimately. Thank you for acknowledging that. Okay, the next question is around NMAX, which I've learned a lot about through this. So NMAX is owned by the City of Calgary. What role do you see NMAX playing in achieving the 2035 clean electricity goals?
I mean, I am going to admit I don't know a whole lot about how kind of NMAX operates as a city utility, or I mean, I know kind of the basics. I think, from my perspective, and this is kind of my experience, is we put solar panels on our roof recently. And when we did the little evaluation thing, NMAX would only permit us to put enough solar panels to meet, I think it was like 100 or 105% of our annual utility usage. And I was like, well, okay, if we're trying to kind of move away, or if we're trying to address climate issues and energy issues, like what's the deal with only being able to provide 105% or 100%, whatever the case was. And I don't know the exact reason. I have my own guesses, but I think we can, start there, for example, and say if there's rooftops, if there's things we can do, places we can put solar, because of course we all know Calgary is such a hotspot for solar energy, like solar radiation or whatever. Why don't we do that? And what's with the limitations? Why aren't we building more solar above parking lots, especially because those seem like prime areas just to add some, some of the renewable energy that we are all talking about to our grid and make it a bit safer for everybody. So, I mean, I think that's one area to start. Aside from that, I mean, I'm not sure. I'd have to kind of dig into it or trust people who are a bit smarter than me or a bit more knowledgeable in this area to kind of help guide.
Yeah, you bet. Like the things I've learned in this is, well, NMAX has divested from clean electricity investment. Is that what I want to say? Like they're only doing natural gas going forward. That being said, like I think what you brought up is all the city-owned facilities. Why wouldn't they be covered in it? So you mentioned parking lot roofs, but why not all of our? And then this conversation about the limits on the 100% of your roof or of your capacity or your power usage. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's some roofs that can't get 100% usage just because of their design or their sun limitations, whatever. So then if you can spread the love, if you will, and allow others to make use of a bigger roof, of a more sunny roof, why wouldn't we be doing that? I love that idea. And yeah, the other piece was around, actually Bob Hawksworth mentioned this, who was a city councilor for 23 years. He mentioned a couple things. One was that NMAX used to have a city councilor on their board. Mm-hmm. So he recommends that that's something that should be looked at being reinstated.
Right.
And the other thing he mentioned is that with the carbon capture facility and the cogen that's set up, co-generated power at Shepherd, there's a potentially opportunity to have some greenhouses potentially around it, using that excess waste for food generation locally. And that'd be a wonderful thing to think about incorporating.
Yeah, I bet it'd be easy to find some people who just want a garden.
Yeah, both heat and CO2 waste get to use. Helping our air be cleaner and everything. It would be a wonderful thing to partake in. So I'm just planting that seed with you. Hopefully that gets some legs in the future. Okay. Next question is around advancing sustainable water use. So how will you advance sustainable water use and watershed protection in Calgary's growth and development decisions? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of comes back to one of the prior questions, and especially in Ward 13, where a lot of our growth is happening. You know, I think I read a stat where, Ward 13 is one of the fastest growing wards in the city, if not the fastest. And I don't know if that's true. It feels true because of how fast some of these communities are growing right now. But again, I think that does come down to kind of like making sure that we have proper bylaws in place to protect these things. And as kind of these communities are growing, we make sure that certain areas are protected, that the community is involved and recognize the value to the people who live there or want to live there, and the value to, of course, the watershed in the areas that we need to protect because it's important.
Yeah, thank you. Some of the things just for your information, I'm on the Bow River Basin Watershed Council Coordinating Committee.
Right.
So I have the opportunity, and I'm just a volunteer, but I have the opportunity to listen to the Watershed Council groups all through the basin. And just to hear the amount of work that they do and the lack of public awareness of this effort and the processes that they have in place to do proper engagement as well. Like I can't think of a better way to start an improved engagement process than to look to the watershed councils and how they do that and how they do that well. So there is an absolute crazy amount of knowledge through professionals and volunteers who dedicate their time to this work. So, and the main thing that I'll leave you with, because I'm as I mentioned, a geophysicist and liability expert, the goal is to restore in our basin, like in fact every basin in Alberta. So thinking about that water-centered thinking, water-centered decision making will really help us move forward differently in the city. Because that, when you talk about sprawl, for example, the question becomes obvious when you understand that the license, like there's no water to be shared anymore in the basin, like it's an oversubscribed basin.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just so interesting that those water conversations have not been incorporated into the city decision making first and foremost. So I'm taking the opportunity to plant that seed.
Please, yeah. I mean, I was chatting with a friend of mine who works at the Nature Conservancy of Canada the other day, and he started to get into watersheds quite a bit. He was like, "We just need to not build in the watersheds." So he's like, "If you do one thing, it's protect the watersheds, and if you, so so that was kind of his comment to me that a couple weekends ago when we were together."
Yeah, for sure. I've learned riparian zones are like so key and so misunderstood and mistreated, I guess I would say. Like, and you were talking about earlier, making sure that you were protecting and those precious areas like around Fish Creek Park, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, we made it to the last question.
Okay.
So how will you ensure that recommendations from Calgarians, including residents, frontline communities, environmental groups, and city staff, are meaningfully considered in council decisions? Thank you.
I mean, I think the primary way is just by engaging people, listening to people, and finding feedback. But also the flip side is communicating back to people and having that dialogue about why these things are so important to our ward, to our city, to our community. And again, making sure that people understand that it's not just, we're not just spending money to spend money, and it's not just, but there are benefits that we're going to receive from it, both, natural benefits, personal benefits, fiscal benefits. Because, like I mentioned earlier, there's certainly a lot of people who have a lot of different priorities and issues and views and values. But, these types of things are kind of cross all of those boundaries. We want to do this because it's good for the environment, because it's good for our neighborhood and communities, and because it's good fiscally. It's good fiscal practice. So, just trying to communicate that out properly is, I think, incredibly important, and kind of getting feedback from the communities about what they want. I would guess, no matter what, if you're, fiscal conservative or whatever it is, you still don't want the city to like pave over deer habitat because you live next to it and you love seeing deer wander through your yard, for example, and you don't want us paving over important watershed environment because you don't want your house flooding, and you love living next to a river. So I think we can do all those things, and we can address issues across values and ideals. It's just a matter of taking input and then communicating it properly.
Wonderful. So it just sounds like you both want to have a dialogue with the community members and engage with why things matter to people, and and expecting that to be ongoing. So it's really nice to hear you say that. And like you said, just if you have, it's interesting through these conversations, these conversations about, well, if I make sure there's natural habitat, then I'm not going to see flooding in my home. Those connections, they don't seem so, like, how can we argue about these things?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's so interesting when we just boil it down to these simple concepts that it all sort of adds up and makes sense to people. So thank you for acknowledging that.
I mean, I was just, I guess the last kind of point I'll add on that is really like, even for people who kind of don't see the fiscal value of it immediately, like our insurance rates are going up because our insurance companies do see the fiscal cost. So they're now including that in our own insurance rates. And that's one of the reasons why our insurance keeps going up, is because the insurance companies see all of these, floods that are happening and fires that are happening and things like that. And they're including those costs now, of course, because insurance companies are going to want to make money, and that's how they do it. They're going to just charge us back. So
that's right. That I certainly saw a doubling of my home insurance this year, which was quite a shock, and tried to shop it around, and there was no change anywhere else. And I'm certain that's from the hail damage that we experienced last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's real, and thank you for bringing that up. It came up in this conversation as well that, if we had invested in that tree canopy for example, there would have been much less damage from that hailstorm. So
Right.
all of
Yeah.
these things that go hand in hand, and they really do matter long term, like you're saying. So really good examples to talk to people about when you have to face those
Yeah.
conversations in the future.
And you know, like if everything is paved everywhere, then there's nowhere for the waters to go when it does, you know, if there is an unfortunate flooding situation. And that's why we, you know, like our natural environments are incredibly important to mitigate a lot of these things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to go through this. I do want to give you an opportunity because you know this is a very specific survey, but if you want to just give like a final pitch or anything that you want to add about your campaign or anything that you want people to know about you.
Yeah,
before.
I mean, I guess the last thing I'll really say is, like, obviously, I've been kind of working and volunteering and studying in like energy and sustainability and environmental issues for like 15 years or so, give or take now. And I do, you know, I've as much as like it's also obviously a personal value of mine to address these things, I think there's also like that fiscal side, that fiscal balance that a lot of people who might not have the same personal convictions towards addressing climate issues as I do and we do. There is that fiscal benefit side to these conversations and to managing and addressing some of these issues. And so, you know, that's kind of especially where I'm running and where I live, trying to kind of talk a lot about that, about how, you know, addressing these issues isn't just because environmental and sustainability issues are important, which they are, but it's also a fiscal issue for us all. And you know, I came out of my MBA, and that's what I love talking about now, is how they work hand in hand, and it's very important to both.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear that you've been going around Board 13 saying that. Yay. It's so true. It's no longer, we don't even need to necessarily talk about the environmental side because it's so fiscally beneficial for everybody as well, just to embrace this transition. Oh, amazing. What a great way to wrap these conversations up, Elliot. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for stepping up.
My last little guest here.
Oh, wonderful.
Well,
what's this?
This is my dog. So this is Frida.
Oh, right on. Yeah, right on.
So
Hi, Frida.
there she is. She just wandered in to say hi, I guess.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for giving Ward 13 another option there. It's really important that there is that choice at the ballot box, and really appreciate you stepping up to the plate, Elliot.
Thank you very much for doing this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Okay, this has been a wonderful experience, I have to say. Thank you to all of the candidates who took the time to have conversations with me and others about these important issues. I'm looking forward to engaging with those who prevail, and I'm sure some of those who don't. It seems like Calgary has a number of candidates who just care about the city and are going to be involved no matter what. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of these conversations going forward. Natural capital, natural services are something that are important to all of us, and this conversation has really helped highlight that. Lastly, please remember to share this and to like and subscribe to the Gravity Well so that people can see this work and understand who your representatives are in this city. Good luck again to everyone that I met, and I will see the rest of you. Next thing for me is Preet and I are going to do a wrap-up conversation on this next week. I'm going to do some clips of all the participants, some 1-minute clips in a group, and we can show that as a video in this. I'll also post them to social media as well, so that you know who you're, get a glimpse of who participated in this long term. And then after this will be, I'm returning to the Water in Southern Alberta podcast series. We're halfway through. Thank you to Bob Morrison, who has been hard at work in the background building the last 6 conversations. So we've reached out to some folks and already have some excellent participation lined up for that. I'm looking forward to returning to those conversations. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Oh, and I will add, before I forget, a friend of the show offered this. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Take care for now.